What is a trademark? There is a principle in linguistics that states that certain words and certain names on their face value retain their own meaning. If we were to borrow that principle from linguistics and make it applicable in this conversation, then we would say that a trademark is a compound word that is made up of two independent and distinct words that on their face value carry their own meaning. But when these two words are brought together, they bring a third meaning. Trademark. What is trade? Trade is an old medieval era word that meant an area of occupation, an area of profession, or an area of skill. In order for me to regard someone to be within the same area of trade, that individual must meet one of those three or all of them. That individual needs to be within the same area of occupation as myself. That individual needs to be in the same area of profession as myself, or that individual needs to be in the area of skill set as myself. In simple words, a doctor will not regard an engineer to be within the same trade as the doctor. A teacher will not regard a vet to be within the same area of trade. An engineer will not regard a police officer to be within the same area of trade. Trades are silos. Trades are restricted. If we were to borrow that understanding and employ it in a trademark, then a trademark is any mark that distinguishes a producer of a good within a restricted area of trade. That would mean lawyers are within their area of trade, engineers are within their area of trade, teachers are within their areas of trade, musicians are within their areas of trade, carpenters, plumbers are within their areas of trade. So at no point will there ever be a situation whereby a doctor will say a farmer is diluting their mark. Those two people are within two different and distinct areas of trade. There is no way a musician will ever say that a vet is diluting their mark, because that vet and the musician are within distinct and different areas of trade. Trademarks are restricted. In subsequent videos, we will start talking about classes and classifications, and it will make more sense, much more sense at that end. But today, I want us to understand that in order for someone to gain interest in a trademark, that person needs to understand how I'm positioning myself within my marketplace. Am I distinguishable in the eyes of the consumer? Am I distinguishable in the eyes of the customer? Because a trademark is that feature that helps you to occupy a part of real estate in the mind of your customer. One can never talk about branding without appreciating trademark. If you talk about branding without appreciating trademark, you don't know what you're talking about. Trademark is the ground from which all meaningful branding emerge. It's very important. What is a mark? A mark is any distinguishable feature that sets you apart from your fellow traders. If we are in the legal space, the way we have set up our private practices, how distinguishable am I from my competitor? If we are in the medical practice and we are running our own private practices, how distinguishable am I from my competitor. If I am running a butchery, and in order for me to understand how distinguishable I stand, then I look at how I have positioned myself and what are those features, what are those components or elements that are easily identifiable with me as a bearer of that good. It's important again for me to reiterate that trademarks exclusively are meant to deal with tangible products. If you're dealing with intangible products, then you are at the area of a service mark. But in medieval era, they didn't quite distinguish between a dealer of tangible products and a dealer of services, intangible products. It is very important, particularly for every small business owner. It is very important for every corporate executive to identify that that which can give us a competitive edge is to be distinguishable in the minds and in the emotions of our customers, in the minds and in the emotions of our consumers. It is very important. At what point, this is a very important question, at what point does a mark qualify to be a distinguishable mark? I've witnessed in numerous occasions people thinking that that is a mark that ought to be trademarked. But during consulting, we are like, bro, this is not a mark. At what point does a mark qualify to be regarded as a trademark? And this is something that I would wish every entrepreneur from here to Timbuktu, from Turdiboro to Singalawaga, everyone to observe. A mark only becomes distinguishable the moment a trader becomes deliberate with that mark and make that mark to be both pronounced and conspicuous. I wanted to say promiscuous. A mark only becomes distinguishable the moment a trader becomes deliberate with it and makes that mark both pronounced and conspicuous. When we are talking of marks, there is no room for accidental marks. We need to be quite deliberate from the get-go, because that mark will give you a piece of real estate in the minds of your buyer, in the minds of your consumer. A mark can originate from something as simple as a logo. A mark can originate from something as simple as a phrase. A mark can originate from something as simple as a diagram. A mark can originate from something as simple as a sound. A mark can originate from something as simple as a taste. A mark can originate from something as simple as sound, as simple as a fragrance, a scent. There are literally endless possibilities when it comes to marks. What will limit one is the level of your deliberateness as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, how have I distinguished myself from my competitors in the marketplace? Now that I understand that marks are siloed, how have I distinguished myself from the people within the same market segment? How have I distinguished myself from people within the same area of practice, within the same area of occupation, within the same area of profession, and even the same area of skill set? We need to be quite deliberate and make our marks to be pronounced and conspicuous. Pronounced means that mark is deliberate where you position it. It is deliberate how you go about your business processes and your business functions. The last question: who can own a mark? Under the law, there are only two types of people who can own anything. The reason why we are saying owning is because in law, In order for you to own something, that thing must meet one important requirement. That thing must have economic value attached to it. And that economic value is not necessarily the value of how you acquired it, the pricing. That is different. That is the cost implication. When we are talking about marks, and the reason why we are saying who can own a mark is because every mark, whether you are aware of it or not, at the base of that mark, there is economic value. Subsequently, as we are proceeding with this conversation, we will get to a point whereby we can comfortably value our marks. We can comfortably value our logos. We can comfortably value our phrases and slogans. They are called marks to be owned because we want to appreciate at the base of that mark there is economic value. So who can own a mark? Under the law, there are only two types of people who can own anything. One, a natural person, that is you and I, a natural person. And secondly, an artificial person. But on a natural person, let me make this point clear. You don't own a mark because you are a public figure. Marks are meant to be transactional at the marketplace. The only qualification you get as a natural person is, as a natural person, do I produce anything? You don't just own a mark because you are a political figure or you are a public figure. That mark must go hand in hand with what you're producing. It's one of the conversations that I've seen in recent times where people are saying that there is a certain politician in Kenya who was awarded a trademark for a name. The question is this: up to this point, what does that individual produce? To the point that you can say that individual is related or that individual is identified with no service, with no product, then that mark is hollow. That individual might have gotten that mark because of the position he occupies in government, but that mark is hollow. The only point one qualifies to own a mark as an individual is when that individual can be connected with the production of a service, with the production of a good. Marks are not awarded because you are a public figure. Marks are only awarded because there is a good that is associated with you. There is a service that is associated with you. Marks are not awarded because one occupies this level of positioning in a society or in community. It is important for every entrepreneur to begin to appreciate marks. Like I've said, your mark is the beginning of your branding. You cannot satisfactorily talk about branding if you're naive of your mark. If you're naive as to the extent of that mark, as to the strength in that mark, it is naive of you to think that you will be competitive if you neglect the areas of mark. I want you to conduct research. Any globally well-known brand, you can attest to this fact, they are equally well-known marks. There is a role that your mark plays in making your business competitive. There is a role that your mark plays in giving you that ability to connect with a consumer base, a customer base. That one is something that you cannot neglect. That is something that you cannot ignore either. It's one of those things that will determine how long your business will be here. Because most of us, we are building on sand, but few amongst us are building on that solid ground. Marks are very solid grounds. My name is Ogwang, and This has been Understanding Trademarks 101 with Mr. Ogwang. I will be seeing you in the next video.